Hi, I'm Mike Ryan. You know, we've covered a lot of topics on our blog here, and we're getting close to 100 articles and videos. And I was getting to a point where I wasn't sure what else I could say about turquoise. So I asked Pam, my wife, I said, "You got any ideas?" And she said, "Well, how about matrix?" And of course, I'm like, duh. Yeah, turquoise matrix. You know, during the period we cover in Turquoise in America Part 1, the Great American Turquoise Rush, 1890 to 1910, the only turquoise that the East Coast jewelers wanted was the pure sky blue turquoise that had been the standard coming from Persia for generations. And that was turquoise that was going into Victorian style jewelry, primarily for a European and East Coast and Midwest market. There was no tourist market. There was no really developed Native American jewelry at that time. And there was just no demand for turquoise and matrix, which, as we know, is how turquoise is primarily formed. You just don't find large deposits of robin's egg blue turquoise with no matrix in it. The one exception being at the Sleeping Beauty mine in Globe, Arizona. That mine's been closed now for 5, 6, 7 years, and it's gone. So most of us, when we think of turquoise, we think of a beautiful turquoise in matrix with a wide variety of different matrices and looks. But this was not always the case. I want to read for you from Turquoise in America Part 1, the Great American Turquoise Rush, from a catalog published in 1908 by the Southwest Turquoise Company. And you can learn all about this history in Part 1. So here's how the company's catalog described turquoise. It occurs in various shades of blue and green. The most valued color among Western races, hey, that was the time, is the rich sky blue. But among many of the Eastern people, the more abundant green shades are preferred. The matrix turquoise is the most popular on account of the beautiful marking. The stones are like beautiful dream pictures, and no two are alike. The cobweb turquoise surpasses all others in its beautiful markings. This is very rare, as there is only one mine which has this particular quality. Well, you can imagine which turquoise company had that mine. It was the Southwest Turquoise Company, and it was one of their claims on Ithaca Peak. We now know as Kingman. Let me read another excerpt here. This is from a competitor to the Southwest Turquoise Company, the Arizona Turquoise Company. 1908, their catalog. So we see at this time, and this was a time when the economy was going into a problem period. It was very, very difficult to find the sky blue turquoise. So they were really looking for other markets. And they were trying to develop it in the East Coast. As we see in Part 2, it didn't happen until their tourist market for Native American jewelry developed. And we can read about that in Part 2 of Turquoise in America. Instead of grinding away the matrix and using only the small, pure turquoise remaining, we cut and polish matrix and turquoise together. This produces a fine, large turquoise matrix from the same rough piece that we would otherwise be able to cut, but only one colored turquoise. Because in these Victorian pieces, you had lots of little pieces, because that's all they could find were little pieces of the sky blue. So they were used in these cluster settings with other precious gems. So that these beautifully marked large stones cost no more than much smaller pure stones. And understand, at this time, turquoise compared to now was much more expensive. The matrix takes an equally high polish with the turquoise, and its varying brown shading with the rich blue of the turquoise forms one of those beautiful harmonies of nature of which the eye never tires. Well, I think most of us today would at least agree with that. So, having said that, let's take a look at some examples of turquoise in matrix. For most people, when the word turquoise comes up, for many of them, they're thinking of this robin's egg sky blue color that, as we just discussed, was what was wanted during the period of the Great American Turquoise Rush. And we can see here that this was sort of the prime example of this. This is a beautiful piece of high-grade Persian turquoise that really exhibits the classical Persian look for the turquoise. And it's oftentimes very difficult to find with no inclusions of any sort in it. In fact, here we see two examples, here and here, of Sleeping Beauty turquoise, beautiful blue color. But even here, there's a few inclusions included in that. And you can see what they were talking about, that in order to remove every possible inclusion, you'd really be grinding away a lot of turquoise. And I think that's one reason why the turquoise of that time period was so expensive relative to its price today. Here we see two more beautiful blue, and this is from a mine that oftentimes is more associated with matrix, and that's the Blue Gem mine at Battle Mountain. These beautiful blue colors. So here we see some examples of turquoise with no matrix. We just saw some examples of blue turquoise with no matrix, but the challenge at Cerrillos was even compounded, because not only was it difficult for the miners to find the pure sky blue turquoise with no matrix, but at Cerrillos, the predominant color is going to be green. Now, I don't think this green is really showing. It's really looking more like a blue-green here. It's really much more of a green here. We see these three examples of green turquoise at Cerrillos. But look here, this is what they were finding. Here, this one little piece of blue in this really beautiful with the green, and then with this little inclusion of matrix there. And then over in this one with more of a blue-green, again with some matrix included. So this was a challenge during the Great American Turquoise Rush, and why, as the market shifted to a tourist market using Native American matrix jewelry, was really appreciated by the miners, because now they could bring a lot more product to market. When we're talking about matrix and turquoise, two terms that come up often are rhyolite and chert. And my association with rhyolite is whenever I see a brown matrix like we see here in this piece, this very large specimen from the Royal Blue Mine in the Royston district, or here we see this, the brown here, or the brown here, which again, these are Blue Oasis, which is just outside of Tonopah, but it's certainly very closely associated with what you might think of in the Royston district. This brown would be a rhyolite. Now, rhyolite, as I understand it, is an igneous rock. It would be the volcanic equivalent of granite. So very, very hard material. And that makes sense, because as the turquoise forms, it needed to have a hard host rock to keep out the rain, the acidic rain, from coming down and destroying it before it could be formed. The other term that I've heard most often associated with turquoise matrix is chert. And here we see this black chert. This is Blue Moon turquoise, which I would say is probably, 30 miles or so, 30, 40 miles from the Royston district, near the Candelaria Hills. And you can learn all about Blue Moon in our video, Blue Moon and the Pay Digs. But where rhyolite is a igneous rock, chert is a sedimentary rock. Now, normally, in my brief Geology 101 in college, I learned that, igneous rock are volcanic and they're harder, that sedimentary formed from oceans and they're softer. But the chert has a lot of silica content in it, which makes it very hard. So once again, we see the turquoise formed in this. And of course, what makes that really nice is that the overall gloss, the look of the cabochon works well because you get this nice interaction between the hardness of the matrix and of the turquoise. If the matrix is too soft, it will undercut and you'll get this pitting in there. It's really not very attractive. You really want, in my mind, you really want a situation where the turquoise is almost floating over this beautiful underlying matrix, hard matrix. And the overall effect is that it all takes a high gloss polish, creating a wonderful, beautiful cabochon. There is so much variety to turquoise. Sometimes we'll find that out of the same mine, we'll find completely different looks with completely different matrix patterns. And here's an example from Indian Mountain, where we see on the left, we see a green turquoise. Now it looks more blue here. It's actually more of a lighter green, but with a brown in a brown matrix. Here we see sort of a classic, what in the 1908 catalog they were saying was the cobweb, which is a very highly desirable black web turquoise. And this we would associate more of a chert formation in that black matrix. And then finally over here we see what is generally would be called more of a red web. Now you don't see it here. In your better examples of the various highest grades from Indian Mountain, you'll see this beautiful red web, this light blue turquoise against this deep red webbed matrix. So once again, the varieties of matrix we can see from the same mine and from different turquoise mines.